The most powerful man in the company took his mute daughter to the same park every day, never hearing a single word from her. But that day, a strange barefoot boy changed everything with a simple gesture. The girl spoke, and the father froze, unable to understand how it was possible. What began as a game in the sand revealed a secret that would transform their lives forever. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The Manhattan skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Bennett Group's executive office. Alexander "Alex" Bennett stood with his back to the impressive view, his attention fixed on the quarterly reports spread across his mahogany desk. As CEO of one of New York's largest real estate development companies, Alex had built his reputation on control, precision, and an almost supernatural ability to predict market shifts. His company had weathered recessions and booms with equal success, expanding its portfolio to include some of the most prestigious properties in the city. "Mr. Bennett, the board is waiting in the conference room," his executive assistant, Melissa, announced from the doorway. Alex nodded without looking up. 5 minutes. His tone left no room for negotiation, and Melissa retreated silently. At 42, Alex maintained the sharp, intimidating presence that had propelled him to the top of New York's competitive business world. His tailored suit and meticulously groomed appearance were as much a part of his armor as his Harvard MBA and his legendary negotiation skills. But behind the carefully constructed facade of the powerful executive was a man struggling to hold together the pieces of his personal life. A life that had shattered 3 years ago on a rainy night on the Taconic Parkway. Alex gathered his papers and strode toward the conference room, his mind momentarily drifting to his 7-year-old daughter, Olivia. He pushed the thought away. Business first, always business first. It was the only realm where he still maintained absolute control. The meeting proceeded with military precision. Alex presented projections, fielded questions, and outlined strategies with his characteristic authority. Walter Garrett, the senior-most board member, studied him with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Impressive as always, Alex," Walter commented as the meeting concluded. "But I'd like a word in private if you can spare a moment." Alex checked his watch, a limited edition Patek Philippe that had been a gift from his late wife, Caroline. "I have a hard stop at 5, Walter. Olivia's therapist expects me home by 5:30. Walter nodded, following Alex back to his office. At 70, Walter was the only person on the board who remembered when Alex's father had run the company, and the only one who had known Alex before he became the unflappable CEO. "How is she doing?" Walter asked once the door closed behind them. Alex's jaw tightened. "No change. Dr. Feldman thinks we should try a new approach." "It's been 3 years, Alex." "I'm aware of how long it's been." His voice carried an edge that would have silenced anyone else, but Walter had known Alex too long to be intimidated. "You can't fix everything with money and determination, son. Some things take time." Alex turned away, looking out at the city he'd helped shape. "Time is the one thing I can't control, Walter. I've hired the best specialists, renovated the house to eliminate every reminder, followed every recommendation, and still nothing." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken grief. Since the accident that had taken Caroline from them, Olivia hadn't spoken a word. Not to the therapists, not to her teachers, not even to Alex. 3 years of silence, from a child who had once filled their home with laughter and endless questions. "The board is concerned about you, Alex," Walter finally said, "taking off early every Wednesday, leaving meetings to take calls from the school." Alex's laugh was harsh. "I still put in 60-hour weeks, Walter. The company has seen record profits for 11 consecutive quarters under my leadership." "It's not about the hours or the profits. It's about focus. Richard Blackwood has been particularly vocal about it." "Blackwood has been gunning for my position since I took over from my father," Alex dismissed. "He can keep plotting. The results speak for themselves." Walter sighed. "Just be careful. You've made enemies with some of your decisions lately. The affordable housing initiative in Brooklyn has ruffled a lot of feathers. It's good business and good PR." "It's a departure from how we've always operated," Walter countered. "Change makes people nervous, especially when it comes from a man they perceive as distracted." Alex checked his watch again. Noted, but I need to go. Rosa will be leaving soon, and I don't like Olivia to be alone. Walter nodded, but as Alex gathered his things, he added, "One more thing, there's talk about bringing in a consultant to evaluate the executive team. Just a heads up." Alex paused at the door. "Let them evaluate. I have nothing to hide." The E. Drive from Manhattan to his Westchester County home took nearly an hour in rush hour traffic. Alex used the time to return calls, dictate emails, and maintain the seamless operation of his business empire. But as the sleek black Audi turned into the circular driveway of his colonial-style mansion, he set his phone aside and tried to shift his mind from CEO to father. The housekeeper Rosa met him at the door. "Good evening, Mr. Bennett. Olivia is in the garden." "Has Dr. Feldman been here?" Alex asked, loosening his tie. "Yes, sir. She left about 20 minutes ago. She said to tell you there's a note on your desk." Alex nodded, heading toward the French doors that led to the backyard. Through the glass, he could see Olivia sitting on the garden swing, her long blonde hair, so like her mother's, catching the late afternoon sunlight. She was perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the koi pond that Caroline had designed when they first bought the house. For a moment, he simply watched her, struck by the familiar ache of helplessness. He'd rebuilt neighborhoods, closed billion-dollar deals, and transformed the New York skyline. But he couldn't reach his own daughter through the wall of silence she'd built around herself. He stepped out into the garden. "Hey, Liv. I'm home." Olivia turned at the sound of his voice. Her blue eyes, also Caroline's, registered his presence, but she didn't smile or speak. She simply watched as he approached and sat beside her on the swing. "How was school today?" he asked, knowing there would be no answer but asking anyway. The therapists had encouraged him to maintain normal conversation patterns. As expected, Olivia didn't respond. She turned her gaze back to the pond, where the orange and white koi moved lazily through the clear water. "Dr. Feldman was here today," he continued. "Did you show her your new drawings?" Olivia's small shoulders lifted in a barely perceptible shrug. Alex sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "How about dinner? Rosa made that pasta you like." After a moment, Olivia nodded and slipped off the swing. She walked ahead of him toward the house, her steps measured and quiet. Alex followed, watching the small, solemn figure of his daughter and wondering, as he did every day, if she would ever find her voice again. Inside, Dr. Feldman's note waited on his desk. He opened it after Olivia was settled at the dining table, with her pasta, Rosa, hovering nearby. "Alex," it read, "I think we need to consider a different approach. Olivia's selective mutism hasn't responded to traditional therapy. I'd like to discuss a more intensive program at our next meeting. Also, I noticed the routine of home therapy school may be too predictable. Consider introducing some unstructured, social activities, perhaps the park or community events where she might observe other children interacting naturally. Call me tomorrow to discuss. Dr. Feldman." Alex folded the note, his jaw tight. Another approach, another program, another expert opinion that offered hope without guarantees. Meanwhile, his vibrant, curious daughter remained locked in silence, and all his power, money, and influence couldn't reach her. He rejoined Olivia at the table, where she was methodically separating the peas from her pasta. 3 years, and he still caught himself holding his breath sometimes, waiting for her to speak, to laugh, to be the child she had been before that rainy night changed everything. "Tomorrow is Wednesday," he said, more to himself than to her. "I'll be home early. Maybe we could try something different. Would you like that, Liv? Something new?" Olivia looked up at him, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she nodded. It wasn't much, just a simple gesture. But in the quiet emptiness of their enormous house, it felt like the first faint echo of his daughter finding her way back to him. Central Park bloomed with early summer colors. As Alex guided Olivia along the winding path toward the playground, he'd cancelled 3 meetings to keep his promise of trying something new, much to the visible disapproval of his executive assistant. But Dr. Feldman's note had lingered in his mind, and for once, the Bennett Group's concerns took second place to his daughter's needs. "It's a beautiful day," Alex commented, glancing down at Olivia, who walked beside him, her small hand in his. She wore a pale blue dress and white sandals, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, the work of Rosa, who still maintained Caroline's standards for their daughter's appearance. Olivia didn't respond, but her eyes tracked a pair of squirrels chasing each other up an oak tree. Alex noted the momentary interest. These days he catalogued every flicker of emotion on his daughter's face, desperate for signs that she was still present behind her silence. The playground came into view, bustling with children and watchful parents. Alex felt Olivia's hand tighten in his, sensing her apprehension. "We don't have to stay long," he assured her. "Just a little while, okay?" After a moment's hesitation, Olivia nodded, and they continued toward the play area. Alex guided her to an empty bench with a good view of the entire playground. He sat down, expecting her to join him as she usually did, observing but never participating. Instead, Olivia remained standing, her attention caught by something across the playground. Alex followed her gaze to the sandbox, where a solitary boy was intently building what appeared to be an elaborate sandcastle. The child was about Olivia's age, with unruly brown hair and clothes that had seen better days, worn jeans with patches at the knees and a faded blue t-shirt. "Do you want to go over there?" Alex asked, surprised by Olivia's interest. Olivia didn't answer, but she took a step forward, then another, pulling slightly on Alex's hand. He stood, allowing her to lead him toward the sandbox. As they approached, Alex noticed more details about the boy. His sneakers were scuffed and clearly too small, with a piece of duct tape reinforcing the side of one shoe. Despite his worn appearance, there was something captivating about the child's focused determination as he carefully shaped towers and walls in the sand. The boy looked up as they reached the edge of the sandbox. He had bright green eyes that lit up with unexpected warmth. "Hi," he said cheerfully. "Do you want to help? I'm building Camelot." Alex waited for Olivia to retreat, as she typically did when directly addressed by strangers. To his astonishment, she released his hand and carefully stepped into the sandbox, kneeling down opposite the boy. "I'm Ethan," the boy continued, seemingly unfazed by Olivia's silence. "What's your name?" Alex stepped forward. "This is Olivia. She doesn't talk much." Ethan shrugged. "That's okay. My mom says actions speak louder than words anyway." He handed Olivia a small plastic shovel. "You can work on the moat if you want. It needs to be deep enough to stop dragons." Alex watched in disbelief as Olivia accepted the shovel and began to carefully dig around the perimeter of the sandcastle. She seemed completely absorbed in the task, her movements precise and deliberate. "You're really good at that," Ethan observed, watching her work. "I bet you build stuff all the time." Alex found himself oddly moved by the boy's easy acceptance of Olivia's silence. For 3 years, he'd witnessed therapists, teachers, and other children grow uncomfortable or frustrated with her lack of response. Yet this child, with his patched clothes and bright eyes, treated her as if there was nothing unusual about her at all. "That's a very impressive castle," Alex said, sitting down on the edge of the sandbox. Ethan beamed. "Thanks. My dad used to tell me stories about knights and castles before." He trailed off, a shadow briefly crossing his face before the smile returned. "I like building things. Mom says I get that from him." "What does your dad do?" Alex asked, his business instinct automatically assessing, categorizing. "He was a construction worker. He built big buildings like the ones downtown." Ethan's voice carried a note of pride mixed with something else, something that resonated with the grief Alex recognized in himself. "Was?" Alex asked quietly. Ethan nodded, focusing intently on shaping a turret. "He's gone now. It was an accident on a building site. Mom says he's watching over us from heaven, but sometimes I think he's still helping me build stuff. Like when I get stuck, I can almost hear him telling me what to do next." Alex felt his throat tighten. The boy's matter-of-fact acceptance of his loss stood in stark contrast to Olivia's retreat into silence. Before he could formulate a response, he heard something that made his heart stop. "Ethan." The voice was soft, slightly raspy from disuse, but unmistakable. It was Olivia's voice, the voice he hadn't heard in 3 years. Both Alex and Ethan turned to her in surprise. Olivia was still focused on digging the moat, not looking at either of them. But she had spoken. She had said the boy's name. "Yeah?" Ethan responded naturally, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Olivia didn't say anything more, but she pointed to a small bucket filled with water that sat at the edge of the sandbox. "Oh, you want to fill the moat? Good idea!" Ethan grabbed the bucket and brought it closer to her. "Here you go." Alex felt frozen in place, afraid that any movement or comment from him might break whatever spell had allowed his daughter to speak. He watched as she carefully poured water into the trench she had dug, her movements deliberate and focused. "Perfect," Ethan declared. "Now no dragons can get in. We should add a drawbridge, though." As the children continued to work on their castle, Alex surreptitiously sent a text to Dr. Feldman. Olivia spoke, one word, at the park. "What do I do?" The IC response came quickly. "Don't overreact. Act natural. Let her lead. Call me later with details." Natural. As if anything about this moment was natural. Alex had imagined his daughter's return to speech countless times, in therapists' offices, at home perhaps during one of their quiet dinners. Never had he pictured it happening in a sandbox with a stranger's child. A child who, like Olivia, had experienced a devastating loss at a young age. Time slipped away as Alex watched the two children work together. Ethan kept up a steady stream of chatter, explaining his vision for the castle, asking Olivia's opinion, and seeming perfectly content with her nods or gestures in response. Occasionally, she would hand him something or point to a section of the castle, and he would understand exactly what she meant, as if they shared some private language. Eventually, a woman's voice called out, "Ethan, time to go, honey." Alex looked up to see a woman hurrying toward them. She wore waitress clothes, black pants and a white shirt with a small logo on the pocket, and looked exhausted, her brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Despite her obvious fatigue, she had the same bright green eyes as her son, and her smile transformed her tired face. "Mom," Ethan waved enthusiastically. "Look what we built. This is Olivia, and she helped me make the moat in the towers." The woman approached, offering Alex a friendly but cautious smile. "Hi there. I'm Sarah Miller, Ethan's mum." Alex stood, extending his hand. "Alexander Bennett. And this is my daughter, Olivia." Sarah's handshake was firm despite her small hand. "It's nice to meet you both. I hope Ethan hasn't been talking your ears off about knights and castles." "Not at all," Alex assured her. "The kids seem to be having a great time." Sarah checked her watch, an inexpensive digital model with a cracked face. "I hate to break this up, but we've got to catch the bus. I have another shift starting soon." "Do we have to go?" Ethan protested. "We just finished the castle." "I'm sorry, sweetie, but Miss Jenkins is expecting us, and you know I can't be late for work." Ethan sighed dramatically, but began dusting sand from his clothes. "Okay, but can we come back tomorrow? Olivia and I need to build a village around the castle." Sarah glanced at Alex apologetically. "We'll see, honey. Mr. Bennett and Olivia might have other plans." "Actually," Alex found himself saying, "we come here most Wednesdays. We'd be happy to meet you again next week if that works for you." Ethan's face lit up. "Really? Did you hear that, Mom? Can we?" Sarah hesitated. "I usually work a double on Wednesdays, but maybe we could stop by in the morning before my shift." "Perfect," Alex said, surprised by his own enthusiasm. "Say around 10. As Sarah and Ethan prepared to leave, Alex noticed Olivia watching them intently. Then, to his continued amazement, she raised her hand in a small wave. Ethan waved back enthusiastically. "Bye, Olivia. Next time we'll build a village with a market and everything." After they had gone, Alex knelt beside Olivia in the sandbox. "Did you have fun today?" Olivia nodded, her blue eyes more animated than he had seen in years. "Would you like to come back next week to play with Ethan again?" Another nod, more emphatic this time. Alex took a deep breath. "Liv, you said his name. You spoke." Olivia's expression became guarded, and Alex immediately regretted mentioning it. She turned away, looking at the sand castle they had built. "It's okay," he said quickly. "It's okay. I was just..." I was happy to hear your voice. But you don't have to talk if you're not ready. Slowly, Olivia turned back to him. There was something in her eyes, a determination, a spark of the little girl she had been before. She reached out and placed her small hand on his cheek, a gesture so reminiscent of Caroline that Alex felt his eyes burn with unshed tears. In that moment, standing in a public park beside a crumbling sand castle, Alex felt the first real hope he'd experienced in 3 years. Something had shifted. A door had cracked open, and somehow a boy with patched jeans and a boundless imagination had found the key that all the expensive specialists had missed. The week crawled by at an excruciating pace. Alex found himself checking his watch constantly on Wednesday morning, distracted during meetings, and uncharacteristically impatient with his executive team. By 9:30 he was already in the car, instructing his driver to take the fastest route to Central Park. "You seem excited today, sir," Jenkins, his longtime driver, remarked. "Olivia's meeting a friend," Alex replied, reviewing emails on his tablet. "A friend?" Jenkins couldn't hide his surprise. In the 3 years he'd been driving the Bennett family, he'd never heard Olivia described as having friends. Alex simply nodded, unwilling to explain further. He hadn't told anyone except Dr. Feldman about Olivia's momentary breakthrough. The therapist had cautioned him against creating too much pressure or expectation, advising him to proceed as normally as possible while facilitating more interactions with Ethan. "Children often connect in ways adults cannot understand," she'd explained. "Something about this boy resonates with Olivia. We need to nurture that connection, while being careful not to overwhelm her." When they arrived at the park, Alex was surprised to find Olivia already waiting by the door, her backpack packed with sand toys she'd asked Rosa to buy. She was wearing a casual outfit, jeans and a light sweater, rather than one of the formal dresses Rosa typically selected. Alex suspected his daughter had exercised rare agency in her clothing choice, another small but significant change. The playground was less crowded than the previous week, with only a few nannies supervising toddlers on the swings. Alex felt a twinge of anxiety when he didn't immediately spot Ethan and Sarah. "They might be running late," he told Olivia, whose eyes were scanning the playground. "Let's wait by the sandbox." They had just settled onto a bench when Ethan came, racing across the grass, his mother hurrying behind him. The boy was dressed in the same worn jeans but had a different faded t-shirt, this one featuring a superhero logo that had almost completely washed away. "Olivia!" Ethan called, waving frantically. "We're here, sorry we're late, the bus was super slow today." Sarah approached more sedately, looking even more tired than the previous week. She wore a different uniform, scrubs this time, pale blue with a hospital logo on the pocket. "Mr. Bennett," she greeted him. "Thanks for waiting. The crosstown bus was a nightmare this morning." "Please, call me Alex," he replied, standing to shake her hand. "And it's no problem at all. We just got here ourselves." As they spoke, Ethan had already led Olivia to the sandbox where they immediately began excavating the remains of the previous week's castle. "Looks like they're picking up right where they left off," Sarah observed with a smile. "It seems that..." Famous Alex gestured to the bench. "Would you like to sit for a moment? You look exhausted." Sarah finished with a self-deprecating laugh. "That obvious, huh?" "I was going to say busy," Alex amended diplomatically. Sarah sank onto the bench gratefully. "Both apply. I just finished a night shift at the hospital. I'm an aide in the ER while I finish my nursing degree. Then I've got a shift waiting tables at Marino's starting at noon." Alex raised his eyebrows, impressed despite himself. "That's quite a schedule." "Single mom survival tactics," she replied with a shrug. "Ethan's worth every minute of lost sleep." Alex watched as Ethan enthusiastically explained his new castle design to Olivia, who was listening with uncharacteristic focus. "He's a remarkable boy, very present." Sarah's face softened. "He's an old soul, always has been. After his father, well, Ethan had to grow up fast, but he still manages to find joy in everything. I don't know how he does it." "Olivia spoke last week," Alex said suddenly, surprising himself with the admission. When Ethan introduced himself, it was the first time she's spoken in 3 years. Sarah's eyes widened. "I had no idea. Ethan didn't mention anything about her not talking. He just said he made a friend who was really good at building moats. That's the first time anyone has just accepted her, Alex said quietly. Usually people get uncomfortable with her silence. They try too hard, or they give up. Kids are different, Sarah observed, watching the two children. They don't have all our adult hang-ups about what's normal or expected. Ethan's just happy to have someone who listens to his castle stories. They sat in companionable silence for a few minutes, watching their children work together in the sandbox. Alex found himself studying Sarah more closely. Despite her obvious exhaustion, there was a quiet strength in her posture, a determination in the set of her jaw. Her clothes were like Ethan's, clean but worn, practical rather than fashionable. The scrubs were slightly faded from many washings, and her shoes had the same worn-down quality as her son's. "How long have you been in nursing school?" he asked. "Almost 3 years now. 1 more year to go." Pride crept into her voice. "It hasn't been easy with Ethan and work, but we're making it." Alex's phone buzzed with an incoming call from the office. He silenced it without looking. "And you work 2 jobs while studying?" "3, actually," Sarah corrected. "Hospital aide, waitress, and weekend babysitting for a family in our building. It's temporary, just until I get my RN license. Then, we'll be on more solid ground." Alex was about to respond when a burst of childish laughter caught his attention. To his astonishment, Ethan had apparently said something that made Olivia smile, a real smile that transformed her solemn face. It wasn't quite laughter, but it was closer than anything Alex had seen in 3 years. "They seem to be hitting it off," Sarah remarked, following his gaze. "They do," Alex agreed, his voice thick with emotion. Sarah checked her watch and sighed. "I hate to cut this short, but I need to get Ethan to our neighbor's house before my shift." "Oh, you're working today? Now?" Alex frowned. "I thought, when you said you had a shift at noon, I assumed you meant tomorrow." "No rest for the weary," Sarah replied lightly. "Ms. Jenkins down the hall watches Ethan between jobs. She's a retired teacher, so she helps him with his schoolwork." Ethan must have overheard, because he looked up from the sandbox with a crestfallen expression. "Is it time to go already? We just started the village." An idea formed in Alex's mind, impulsive and completely unlike his usual careful deliberation. "What if Ethan stayed with us for a while? I could have my driver take him to your neighbor's house later." Both Sarah and Ethan stared at him in surprise. "That's very kind," Sarah said carefully, "but I couldn't impose like that. Besides, you don't even know us." "It's not an imposition," Alex insisted. "I've cancelled my meetings for the morning, and Olivia is clearly enjoying Ethan's company." He hesitated, then added more quietly, "I haven't seen her this engaged in a very long time." Sarah still looked uncertain. "I don't know." "Please, Mom," Ethan pleaded. "We just started building the village, and Olivia brought special toys for the moat." Sarah bit her lip, visibly torn. "Mr. Bennett, Alex, I appreciate the offer, but Ethan can be a handful, and if your daughter isn't used to—" "I think she could use a handful right now," Alex interrupted gently. "Look at them." In the sandbox, Olivia was carefully arranging small stones in a circle, while Ethan explained something with animated gestures. Her usual blank expression had been replaced by one of concentration and interest. "I have to be at Marino's by noon," Sarah said, wavering. "And Miss Jenkins isn't expecting him until 11:30. My driver can take him wherever you need by 11:15, Alex promised, "and you're welcome to call my office to verify who I am, if that would make you more comfortable." He pulled out a business card, sleek, minimalist, with the Bennett Group logo embossed in silver. "Here's my direct line and cell number." Sarah accepted the card, her eyes widening slightly as she read it. "Bennett Group. Wait, you're that Bennett? The real estate developer?" Alex nodded, feeling oddly self-conscious. "That's right." She studied him with new wariness. "Wow, your company built half of Midtown." "Not quite half," he said with a small smile. "Just the good parts." Sarah didn't return the smile. Instead, she glanced at Ethan, then back at the business card. "The Bennett Towers on 5th Avenue, that's you? One of our flagship properties, yes." Something flickered in Sarah's eyes, recognition followed by what looked like pain, quickly masked. She handed the card back to him. I'm sorry, but I think we should go. Ethan. Sarah, wait, Alex said, confused by her sudden change in demeanor. Is something wrong? She shook her head, already gathering her purse. Nothing's wrong, we just need to leave. Ethan, come on, honey. We need to go now. Ethan looked up in dismay. But Mom, now Ethan, Sarah said firmly, Miss Jenkins is expecting us. But you said she wasn't expecting me until… Ethan. Her tone left no room for argument. Alex watched in confusion as Ethan reluctantly said goodbye to Olivia and trudged over to his mother. Olivia's face had fallen back into its familiar blank expression, her shoulders slumping slightly as she watched her new friend prepare to leave. I'm sorry if I said something to offend you, Alex said quietly to Sarah. That wasn't my intention. Sarah's expression softened slightly. It's complicated. I'm sorry, we really do need to go. Will you come back next Wednesday? He asked, aware of how much the answer mattered to Olivia, and surprisingly to himself. Sarah hesitated, looking down at Ethan's hopeful face. I don't know. Maybe. Please, Ethan pleaded. Olivia's my friend now. We have to finish our castle. After a long moment, Sarah nodded. We'll try, same time next week. As they walked away, Alex noticed Olivia staring after them, a small frown creasing her forehead. Then, to his astonishment, she stood up and called out in her small, rusty voice, Bye, Ethan. Ethan turned, his face lighting up. He waved enthusiastically. Bye, Olivia. See you next week. Sarah's eyes widened at the sound of Olivia's voice, and she gave Alex a questioning look. He nodded slightly, confirming what she had just witnessed. Something passed between them, a shared understanding of the significance of that moment. Sarah's expression softened further, and she gave a small nod before turning to leave with Ethan. Back in the car, Olivia sat quietly, clutching her bag of sand toys. Alex studied his daughter's profile, noting the slight downward turn of her mouth. Did you have fun with Ethan? He asked. Olivia nodded, her eyes fixed on the passing scenery. We'll see him again next week, Alex assured her. And maybe you could have a play date at our house sometime. Olivia turned to him, her blue eyes serious. Then slowly she nodded again. Alex's phone buzzed with yet another call from the office. This time he turned it off completely. Whatever crisis awaited him at Bennett Group, it could wait. For the first time in 3 years, something more important was happening. His daughter was finding her way back to the world. One word, one sandcastle, one friendship at a time. But as the car wound its way back toward their Westchester home, Alex couldn't help wondering about Sarah's reaction to his company. Something about the Bennett Group had clearly troubled her. He made a mental note to have his assistant do some research, discreetly of course. There was something about Sarah and Ethan Miller that had reached Olivia in a way no one else had been able to, and Alex wasn't about to let that connection slip away without understanding why. The morning of the next Wednesday dawned with a steady drizzle that threatened to wash away Alex's carefully laid plans. He stood at Olivia's bedroom window, watching raindrops trace patterns on the glass while his daughter methodically packed her sand toys, seemingly undeterred by the weather. Liv, he said gently, it's raining pretty hard. We might not be able to go to the park today. Olivia paused, her small hands gripping a plastic shovel. She turned to look at him, her expression a mixture of disappointment and determination. I know you want to see Ethan, Alex continued, but they might not come in this weather, and the sandbox will be… They'll come, Olivia said, her voice still raspy from disuse but clearer than the week before. Alex felt a jolt of surprise, 2 sentences in 1 week after 3 years of silence. He tried to keep his reaction measured, remembering Dr. Feldman's advice not to overemphasize Olivia's speech. Maybe, he agreed, but the sandbox will be too wet to build anything. Olivia considered this, her brow furrowing in concentration. Then she abandoned her backpack and went to her desk, where she pulled out a sheet of paper and a crayon. In careful, deliberate strokes, she wrote, "Can Ethan come here?" Alex read the note, a lump forming in his throat. Not only was Olivia communicating, but she was taking initiative, something she hadn't done since the accident. "That's a great idea," he said, keeping his voice casual despite the emotion welling inside him. "I could call Sarah and invite them over. Would you like that?" Olivia nodded emphatically. There was just one problem. Alex didn't have Sarah's phone number. Their meetings had been arranged through coincidence and a vague agreement about Wednesdays at the park. For the first time in years, Alex found himself at a planning disadvantage. "Let me see what I can do," he told Olivia. "Why don't you think about what games you and Ethan might like to play indoors?" In his study, Alex called Melissa, his executive assistant. "I need you to find contact information for a Sarah Miller," he explained. "She has a son named Ethan, around 7 years old. They live somewhere in the city, possibly Queens or Brooklyn, based on the bus routes she mentioned. She works as an aide at a hospital, I'm not sure which one, and also as a waitress at a restaurant called Marino's. She's in nursing school." "That's not a lot to go on, Mr. Bennett," Melissa replied, the frown evident in her voice. "Do you have any other details?" Alex hesitated. "Her husband worked in construction. There might be a connection to one of our projects, but I'm not certain." "I'll see what I can find, sir. Should I prioritize this over the Chicago acquisition documents?" "Yes," Alex said without hesitation. "This is personal, Melissa, for Olivia." There was a brief pause. "I understand, sir. I'll call you as soon as I have something." While waiting, Alex made arrangements at the house. He instructed Rosa to prepare lunch options suitable for children and asked Jenkins to be ready to pick up their guests if needed. By 11 o'clock, when no word had come from Melissa, Alex decided to take a chance. He and Olivia would go to the park anyway, rain or no rain. If Sarah and Ethan showed up, they could extend the invitation in person. The playground was deserted when they arrived, the swings swaying forlornly in the drizzle. Alex held an umbrella over Olivia as they made their way to their usual bench, now slick with rainwater. He wiped it dry with a handkerchief, and they sat, watching the empty playground. Olivia's shoulders slumped slightly as the minutes ticked by with no sign of Ethan. Alex checked his phone repeatedly, willing Melissa to call with Sarah's contact information. "They might be running late," he suggested, "or maybe they thought we wouldn't come because of the rain." Olivia didn't respond, her eyes fixed on the path where Ethan had appeared the previous 2 Wednesdays. After 30 minutes, Alex's phone finally rang. It was Melissa. "Mr. Bennett, I found her. Sarah Miller, 29, lives in Woodside, Queens. She works at Queens General Hospital and at Marino's Italian restaurant in Astoria. I've confirmed that her son is named Ethan, age 7. "That's her," Alex said, relief washing over him. "Do you have a phone number?" "Yes, sir, but there's something else you should know." Melissa's voice took on a cautious tone. Her husband, David Miller, was a construction worker who was involved in an accident at the Bennett Tower site on 5th Avenue 3 years ago. He was one of the workers who didn't survive. Alex felt as if the ground had shifted beneath him. "Are you certain?" "Yes, sir. The company settled with Mrs. Miller out of court. The documents are in our legal archives. The pieces fell into place. Sarah's reaction to his business card, the pain in her eyes when he mentioned Bennett Towers, her sudden desire to leave. Her husband had lost his life on his company's project, and now their children were building sandcastles together." "Sir? Are you still there?" "Yes, Melissa. Give me her number, please." Alex took down the information, thanked Melissa, and ended the call. He sat motionless, processing this new information while the rain fell steadily around them. "Dad?" Olivia's voice startled him from his thoughts. "Are they coming?" Alex looked at his daughter, at the hope in her eyes, and made a decision. "I'm going to call them now. Maybe they're just running late." He dialed Sarah's number, his heart pounding uncomfortably. After 4 rings, she answered. "Hello? Sarah, this is Alexander Bennett from the park." A brief silence followed. "How did you get this number?" "I have resources," he admitted. "I apologize for the intrusion, but Olivia was very disappointed about missing Ethan today, and I thought, perhaps with the rain wet we could arrange something else." Another pause. "Mr. Bennett, I don't think—" "I know about your husband," Alex interrupted quietly, moving slightly away from Olivia. "I know he was at the Bennett Tower site. I didn't realize. I'm so sorry, Sarah. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was tight with emotion. Is that why you sought us out? Guilt? No, Alex replied honestly. I had no idea until just now. Olivia and I met you and Ethan by complete chance. And now, he glanced at his daughter, who was watching him intently. Now Olivia is speaking again after 3 years of silence. Because of Ethan. What do you want from us? Sarah asked, her voice softer but still wary. Olivia would like to invite Ethan for a playdate. At our house. Since the park is rained out. Your house? The skepticism was evident in her tone. Yes, I can send my driver to pick you both up. No strings attached, Sarah. Just 2 children who seem to connect with each other. After what seemed like an eternity, Sarah sighed. Ethan has been talking about Olivia all week. He was disappointed about the rain. So was Olivia. Alex held his breath, waiting. What time were you thinking? Relief flooded through him. Whenever works for you. We're actually at the park now, believe it or not. Olivia insisted on coming despite the weather. A small laugh escaped Sarah. Ethan did the same thing. He's sitting by the window with his jacket on, watching the rain and asking every 5 minutes if it's stopping yet. Something warm unfurled in Alex's chest at the image. So you'll come? I guess we will, Sarah conceded. But just for a few hours. I have a late shift at the hospital tonight. Alex provided their address and arranged for Jenkins to pick them up. When he ended the call and turned back to Olivia, he found her watching him with an intensity that reminded him painfully of Caroline. They're coming to our house, he told her. Jenkins is going to pick them up. For the first time in 3 years, Alex saw genuine excitement on his daughter's face. She stood up immediately, tugging on his hand, clearly ready to go home and prepare. The drive back to Westchester was marked by an energy that had been absent from their lives for too long. Olivia flitted from window to window in the car, her usual stillness replaced by restless anticipation. Alex found himself infected by her excitement, making calls to ensure everything would be ready for their guests. By the time Jenkins returned with Sarah and Ethan, the rain had slowed to a gentle mist, and Olivia was waiting by the front door, practically vibrating with anticipation. Alex stood behind her, experiencing a strange mixture of emotions: hope for his daughter, guilt about David Miller, and an unexpected nervousness about having Sarah in his home. The car pulled into the circular driveway, and Ethan bounded out. Before Jenkins could open the door properly, he wore a bright yellow raincoat and carried a backpack that appeared to be stuffed to capacity. "Olivia!" he called, racing up the steps. "Your house is like a castle. Do you have secret passages? My mom said rich people sometimes have secret rooms." Sarah emerged more slowly, her discomfort evident as she took in the grand facade of the Bennett estate. She was dressed simply in jeans and a green sweater, her hair damp from the rain despite Jenkins' umbrella. "Thank you for inviting us," she said formally as she approached. "This is quite a home." "It's too big, actually," Alex replied, surprising himself with his candor. "Caroline, my late wife, fell in love with the property, but it's really more space than Olivia and I need." Something in his tone must have resonated with Sarah, because her posture relaxed slightly. "I know what you mean. After David, our apartment felt both too empty and too full of memories at the same time." Their eyes met in a moment of shared understanding, the peculiar geography of grief that only those who have navigated it can truly comprehend. The moment was broken by Ethan's excited voice. "Mom, Olivia has a whole room just for toys and a fish pond in the backyard." Sarah smiled at her son's enthusiasm. "Inside voice, Ethan. Remember, we're guests here." "It's fine," Alex assured her. "The house could use a little more noise." The afternoon unfolded with surprising ease. After an initial tour that left Ethan wide-eyed and Sarah visibly uncomfortable with the luxury, the children settled in the sunroom, where they constructed an elaborate city using Olivia's building blocks and art supplies. Alex and Sarah sat nearby, their conversation gradually warming as the awkwardness between them dissipated. "She's different with him," Alex observed, watching as Olivia carefully followed Ethan's animated instructions about where to place a building. More present, Sarah nodded. Ethan has that effect on people. Even as a baby, he could charm the crankiest customer at the diner where I used to work. He reminds me of Caroline, Alex admitted. She had that same lightness, that ability to connect. What happened? Sarah asked softly. To your wife? Alex rarely spoke about the accident, but something about Sarah's direct gaze made the words come more easily. Car accident. 3 years ago, a truck jackknifed on the Taconic during a rainstorm. Caroline was driving Olivia home from ballet class. He swallowed hard. Olivia was in the back seat. She saw everything. Sarah's hand moved as if to reach for his, then stopped. And that's when she stopped speaking. In the hospital, she had minor injuries, a broken arm, some cuts. But she wouldn't speak. Not to me, not to the doctors, not to anyone. Alex's voice dropped. Until she met Ethan. They both turned to watch the children again. Ethan was explaining something, with grand gestures, and Olivia was nodding, her face animated in a way Alex had almost forgotten was possible. Ethan went through something similar, Sarah said after a moment. After David's accident, he didn't speak for almost 6 months. The psychologist called it traumatic mutism. Alex turned to her in surprise. I had no idea. He doesn't remember it now, or if he does, he doesn't talk about it. Sarah's eyes never left her son. Kids are resilient, more than we give them credit for. Rosa appeared to announce that lunch was ready, and they moved to the informal dining room where she had prepared a spread of sandwiches, fruit, and homemade cookies. Alex noticed that Sarah ate sparingly, taking small bites and chewing slowly, as if savoring each mouthful. The conversation flowed more naturally over lunch, with Ethan dominating the discussion with stories about school and his elaborate plans for future construction projects. To everyone's surprise, Olivia occasionally nodded or shook her head in response to his questions, and once she even pushed her plate of cookies toward him when he finished his own. You're sharing? Ethan asked, delighted. Thanks, Olivia. See, Mom, I told you she's the nicest girl in my class. Ethan, Olivia isn't in your class, Sarah corrected gently. Not yet, Ethan declared confidently, but she will be when she comes to my school. Alex and Sarah exchanged glances, both recognizing the improbability of Olivia ever attending Ethan's public school in Queens, but neither contradicted the boy's assumption. After lunch, the rain had stopped completely, and the children moved outside to explore the gardens. Alex and Sarah followed, at a distance, continuing their conversation. Thank you for today, Sarah said unexpectedly. When I realized who you were, who your company was, I didn't think I could ever be in the same room with you. But seeing Ethan so happy, and what his friendship means to Olivia, it puts things in perspective. I should be thanking you, Alex replied. And I want you to know if there's anything I can do to make your lives easier. Sarah stopped walking. We don't need your charity, Mr. Bennett. Alex, he corrected. And it's not charity, it's atonement, maybe. My company was responsible for your husband's accident. Your company paid a settlement, Sarah said firmly. The legal obligations were fulfilled. We're managing. Alex studied her face, the proud set of her jaw, the determined glint in her green eyes. 3 jobs while going to nursing school doesn't sound like managing. It sounds like barely surviving. We're doing what we need to do, Sarah insisted. Besides, what would you suggest? That you swoop in and solve all our problems with your checkbook? That's not how real life works. Before Alex could respond, Ethan's distressed voice called out, Mom, come quick! Olivia's crying! They hurried toward the children, who were near the koi pond. Olivia was indeed crying, silent tears streaming down her face as she pointed at something in the water. It was a small toy, a plastic knight that had apparently fallen from the bridge that spanned the pond. My knight, Ethan explained anxiously. He fell in when we were playing, and Olivia's upset because she thinks he's drowning. Without hesitation, Sarah knelt by the pond, rolled up her sleeve, and reached into the water to retrieve the toy. The koi scattered in alarm as her hand disturbed their tranquil world. "There," she said, presenting the dripping Knight to the children. "Sir Knight is safe and sound." "Thanks, Mum." Ethan took the toy and turned to Olivia. "See? He's okay. Knights know how to swim a little bit." "Anyway," to everyone's astonishment, Olivia spoke, her voice small but clear. "My mom is in heaven, like your dad." The simple statement hung in the air, stunning the adults into silence. Ethan, however, nodded as if she had said something perfectly ordinary. "Yeah, I know. That's why we understand each other. My dad watches over me from a star. Does your mum have a star too?" Olivia nodded solemnly. "The brightest one, Dad showed me." "That's cool," Ethan said. "Maybe they're neighbors up there." Alex felt something break and heal simultaneously in his chest as he watched the exchange. Sarah's eyes met his, filled with the same wonder and heartache that he felt. In the simple wisdom of children, their shared losses were neither awkward nor defining, just facts to be acknowledged and incorporated into their understanding of each other. And somewhere in that moment, amid the gentle splashing of the koi and the innocent conversation of two children who had both known too much sorrow too soon, something shifted between Alex and Sarah, a recognition that transcended guilt, obligation, or circumstance. They were two people standing on common ground, watching their children heal each other in ways that all the wealth or hard work in the world could never accomplish. The weekly playdates became a fixture in their lives. Each Wednesday, Jenkins would pick up Sarah and Ethan from their apartment in Queens, bringing them to the Bennett estate where Olivia waited with barely contained excitement. Alex rearranged his entire work schedule, blocking off Wednesdays for personal business and fielding the increasingly pointed questions from his board with vague references to family matters. Summer gave way to fall, and with the change in seasons came other changes. Olivia began speaking more frequently, first only to Ethan, then occasionally to Sarah, and finally in halting sentences to Alex himself. Dr. Feldman called it remarkable progress and suggested that Olivia might be ready to return to school after the winter break, a possibility that both thrilled and terrified Alex. As for Sarah, Alex watched her gradual transformation from wary acquaintance to something he hesitated to define. She still declined his offers of financial assistance, but she had accepted smaller gestures: a ride home after a late hospital shift, delivery of Ethan's favorite pizza on study nights, a recommendation letter for her nursing program that had helped secure a competitive internship. The barriers between them lowered incrementally with each passing week, though they never directly addressed the tragic connection that had first separated them. It was early October when Alex's carefully constructed balance began to falter. The board meeting had run long, with Richard Blackwood dominating the discussion with pointed questions about Alex's recent decisions, particularly his rejection of a highly profitable but controversial development project in a struggling Brooklyn neighborhood. "The numbers don't lie, Alex," Richard said, his voice carrying the practiced concern that barely masked his ambition. "Bennett Group has always prioritized shareholder value. This project would have increased our portfolio by 12%. Instead, you're suggesting we allocate resources to renovating existing properties with lower returns. Sustainable development creates long-term value," Alex countered. "Gentrifying that neighborhood would displace hundreds of families. Our renovation plan provides affordable housing while still generating reasonable returns." Reasonable. Richard's tone made the word sound like a disease. Since when has Bennett Group settled for reasonable? Walter Garrett, who had remained silent throughout most of the exchange, finally intervened. "I think we need to consider Alex's vision for the company's future. Times are changing, and corporate responsibility is increasingly important to investors." "Corporate responsibility doesn't pay dividends," Richard retorted. "And speaking of responsibility, I believe we should discuss the Miller situation." Alex stiffened. "What Miller situation?" Richard slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were photographs: Jenkins dropping Sarah and Ethan at their apartment building, Alex and Sarah having coffee at a small cafe near the hospital, Ethan and Olivia playing in Central Park while their parents watched from a nearby bench. You've been spending a great deal of time with Sarah Miller, Richard observed. The widow of a construction worker who lost his life at our Fifth Avenue project, a project that you personally oversaw. My personal life is not the board's concern, Alex said coldly. It becomes our concern when it involves potential conflicts of interest, Richard countered, or when it might expose the company to additional liability. Mrs. Miller accepted a settlement after her husband's accident, but fraternization with the CEO could be construed as evidence of ongoing guilt or responsibility. Fraternization. Alex's voice was dangerously quiet. Mrs. Miller's son and my daughter are friends, that's all. For now, Richard agreed smoothly. But these photographs suggest a more personal involvement is developing. The board has a duty to protect the company from any actions that might jeopardize its stability or reputation. Walter cleared his throat. I think that's enough, Richard. Alex's personal relationships are his own business, as long as they don't affect his leadership. But they have affected his leadership, Richard insisted. The Brooklyn decision is just one example, and there's the matter of a certain hiring decision at corporate headquarters. Alex's jaw tightened. He had recently approved Sarah's application for a part-time administrative position in the company's HR department, a job that would provide better pay, regular hours, and benefits while allowing her to complete her nursing studies. Mrs. Miller is qualified for the position, he said evenly. Her application went through the standard HR process. With your personal recommendation, Richard noted, and an expedited interview schedule. The meeting had eventually adjourned without resolution, but Richard's parting words lingered in Alex's mind as he drove home. The board will be watching this situation closely, Alex. I suggest you consider what's truly important, your personal indulgence of guilt, or the company your father built. By the time Alex arrived home, his mood was as dark as the gathering storm clouds outside. He found Olivia in the sunroom, drawing elaborate castles with the new art supplies he'd bought her. She looked up when he entered, her smile fading as she registered his expression. What's wrong, Dad? She asked. The question itself was a marvel. 6 months ago she wouldn't have spoken at all, let alone initiated conversation. Just work, he replied, forcing a smile. Politics and paperwork, nothing for you to worry about. Olivia studied him with the penetrating gaze she'd inherited from her mother. Is it about Ethan and Sarah? Alex startled. Why would you think that? She shrugged, returning to her drawing. You look the same way Miss Prescott did when Tommy's mom said I could come to his birthday party. Like you're worried, but trying not to show it. Miss Prescott had been Olivia's kindergarten teacher, before the accident, before the silence. Alex was momentarily thrown by the casual reference to that earlier life. It's complicated adult stuff, he said finally. But yes, it's partly about Sarah and Ethan. Are they not coming tomorrow? Alarm crept into Olivia's voice. No, they're still coming, Alex assured her quickly. It's just, some people at my company think I shouldn't spend so much time with them. Why not? Alex hesitated, unsure how to explain corporate politics and liability concerns to a 7-year-old. They think it might cause problems for the company. Olivia frowned, processing this. But Ethan's my friend. And Sarah makes you smile, the B. Real smile, not the one you use for the people from work? The observation hit with unexpected force. Had he been smiling more? He supposed he had. The weekly playdates had become a bright spot in his otherwise regimented life, bringing a warmth and spontaneity he hadn't experienced since Caroline's passing. Yes, they do make me smile, he acknowledged. And that's a good thing. Don't worry about it, Liv. The people at work just like everything to be neat and organized, and life isn't always like that. Olivia seemed satisfied with this explanation and returned to her drawing. Alex watched her for a moment, struck by how much she'd changed over the past months. The silent, withdrawn child was giving way to someone more reminiscent of the Olivia he'd known before, curious, observant, occasionally stubborn. And it was all because of a chance meeting in a sandbox with a boy who should have been, by all logical measures, the last child she should befriend. That night, after Olivia was asleep, Alex found himself in his study, staring at Caroline's photograph on his desk. "What would you do?" he asked the smiling image. "You were always better at navigating the messy parts of life." His phone rang, interrupting his one-sided conversation. It was Sarah. "I hope I'm not calling too late," she began, her voice tense. "Not at all. Is everything all right?" "I'm not sure," she paused. "I received an eviction notice today. Apparently our building has been sold to a development company. All tenants have 30 days to vacate." Alex frowned. "That's not much notice. Is that even legal?" "The lawyer I spoke with says it's a gray area. The building is old, and there have been code violations. The new owners are claiming it's for safety renovations." Her voice tightened. "The real story is that they're converting it to luxury condos. Our neighborhood is the latest up-and-coming target." "I'm sorry, Sarah, that's terrible timing with your new job starting next week." "That's the other thing." She took a deep breath. "I got a call from HR at Bennett Group today. The position has been reconsidered. They said the department's needs have changed, and they're no longer hiring for that role." Alex felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "That's impossible. I approved the position myself." The woman I spoke with seemed uncomfortable. She mentioned something about a board review of all new hires. Sarah's voice wavered slightly. "Alex, what's going on? First the eviction, now the job. It feels like more than coincidence." "I'll look into it," he promised, his mind already racing. Richard Blackwood's reach apparently extended further than he'd realized. "As for the eviction, don't worry. I can help you find a new place. Maybe something closer to the hospital for your internship." "We can't afford anything closer to the hospital," Sarah said flatly. "Queens was barely manageable, and that's with roommates in the building helping. With Ethan when I work nights." "I could—" "No," her interruption was firm. "We've discussed this, Alex. I won't accept your money." "It wouldn't be charity," he insisted. "It would be a friend helping a friend." A long silence followed. "Is that what we are, friends?" The question hung between them, loaded with unspoken complexities. "I'd like to think so," he finally answered, "despite everything." "Despite the fact that your company was responsible for David's accident?" The words were direct but not accusatory, simply acknowledging the elephant that had been in the room since they discovered their connection. "Yes," Alex said quietly. "And despite the fact that our children have formed a bond that defies all logical explanation. And despite the fact that my board of directors is apparently willing to sabotage a qualified job candidate to make a point about my personal life." "Your personal life," Sarah's voice sharpened. "Is that what this is about? They think we're involved?" "According to Richard Blackwood, our weekly playdates constitute fraternization that could expose the company to liability." "That's ridiculous. We're two parents whose children are friends. There's nothing—" She stopped abruptly. "Nothing inappropriate," Alex finished for her, ignoring the strange twist in his chest at the words. "I know. But perception matters in corporate politics, and Richard has been looking for ways to undermine me for years. So our friendship is inconvenient for your corporate image." Something like that. Another silence stretched between them. "What do we do now?" Sarah finally asked. "Let me handle the job situation," Alex said. "That was blatant interference, and I won't stand for it. As for the eviction, let me at least help you look for options. No financial strings attached, just information and connections. And the play dates? Ethan will be devastated if they stop. He talks about Olivia constantly." "The feeling is mutual," Alex assured her. "Olivia asked about tomorrow as soon as I got home. We're not canceling anything, Sarah. Richard Blackwood doesn't get to dictate my daughter's friendships or my personal relationships." "Okay," she agreed, sounding relieved. "I should go. I have an early shift tomorrow and I need to start making calls about apartments. Try to get some rest. We'll figure this out." After they hung up, Alex sat motionless, staring at the dark window. The reflection that stared back at him was a man at a crossroads, caught between the corporate world he'd mastered and the messy, complicated personal life he'd begun to rebuild from the ashes of tragedy. Caroline's photograph seemed to watch him with knowing eyes. She would have handled this differently, he thought. She would have seen through the corporate maneuvering to the heart of what mattered. She had always been his moral compass, especially when business and personal values collided. Alex picked up his phone again and dialed Walter Garrett's number. "It's a bit late for business calls, Alex," the older man answered. "This isn't entirely business," Alex replied. "Did you know about HR cancelling Sarah Miller's position?" A heavy sigh came through the line. "I heard rumors. Richard called an emergency subcommittee meeting this afternoon. I wasn't invited. He's overstepping. He's protecting the company, in his view. By interfering in a routine hiring decision, by having me followed and photographed." Alex's voice rose. "This isn't about the company, Walter. It's about control." "Perhaps," Walter conceded, "but you've given him ammunition, Alex. Your connection to the Miller family raises questions, especially given the circumstances of David Miller's accident. An accident that happened on a site I personally supervised," Alex said quietly. "An accident that took a good man away from his wife and son. If I can do something to make their lives easier now, how is that wrong?" "It's not wrong," Walter replied. "It's human, but business isn't always compatible with humanity, Alex. You know that better than most." The words stung because they contained a kernel of truth. Alex had built his career on pragmatic decisions, sometimes at the expense of the human element. He justified developments that displaced communities, prioritized profits over people, more times than he cared to remember. It was the Bennett way, his father's legacy. "I need to go," Alex said abruptly. "I'll see you at the office tomorrow." "Alex," Walter's voice stopped him before he could hang up. "Richard has called for a special board meeting on Friday. The agenda includes a vote of confidence in your leadership. You should be prepared." The implication was clear. His position as CEO was in jeopardy. The company his family had built for generations could slip from his grasp, all because he'd allowed himself to care about a woman and her son who, by all rights, should have been nothing more than a legal settlement in the company files. The next day, Wednesday, arrived with a clarity that seemed to mock Alex's inner turmoil. Jenkins picked up Sarah and Ethan as usual, but Alex could sense the tension in Sarah's shoulders, the careful way she avoided any topic related to jobs or housing during their initial conversation. The children, blissfully unaware of the adult complications, disappeared into the garden to continue work on an elaborate fairy village they'd been constructing under a willow tree. Alex and Sarah found themselves alone in the kitchen, the pretense of normalcy becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. "Any luck with apartment hunting?" Alex finally asked. Sarah shook her head. "Everything in our price range is either too far from Ethan's school or in neighborhoods I don't want him growing up in." "Let me help," Alex said quietly. "Not with money, if that's still a sticking point. But I have connections, properties. There must be something." "Stop," Sarah held up a hand. "I've been thinking about this all night, Alex. This situation, it's becoming too complicated. Maybe Richard Blackwood is right. Maybe we should take a step back." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that our friendship, or whatever this is causing problems for you. Problems that could affect your company, your position. That's my concern, not yours. It becomes my concern when it affects Ethan." Sarah's eyes flashed with maternal protectiveness. "He's already lost one parent. I won't have him caught in the middle of corporate politics or becoming the reason a man loses his family's company." "No one is losing anything," Alex insisted. "Richard, Gay's posturing, that's all." "Is it? You look like you haven't slept. Your assistant called this morning to confirm tomorrow's board meeting, a meeting she described as critical. You're under attack because of us, Alex." Before he could respond, a shout from the garden interrupted them. They rushed outside to find Ethan in tears and Olivia standing rigid with anger. A toy castle lay broken between them. "She pushed me," Ethan sobbed. "I just wanted to move the castle, and she pushed me." "Olivia," Alex was shocked. "We don't push people. What happened?" Olivia's face was flushed, her hands clenched into fists. "He was doing it wrong. The castle has to stay there." "That doesn't mean you can push him," Sarah said gently, kneeling to check Ethan for injuries. "People can have different ideas about how to play." "No," Olivia's voice rose. "It has to be right. Dad said so." Alex frowned. When did I say that, Liv? You always say everything has to be perfect. That's why you work all the time. That's why Mom had to drive in the rain to get me to ballet on time. Olivia's words tumbled out in a rush of emotion that stunned everyone, into silence. And now you're going to make Ethan go away because people at work don't like him. The raw accusation hit Alex like a physical blow. Behind Olivia's outburst lay a truth he had never fully acknowledged. His daughter blamed him at some level for the accident that took Caroline from them. His relentless pursuit of perfection, his demanding schedule, his high expectations, had created a household where being late was not an option, even on rainy nights. And now history seemed to be repeating itself. His corporate world was once again threatening to take away someone Olivia cared about. Olivia, that's not true, he began, but the damage was done. His daughter turned and ran toward the house, her small shoulders shaking with sobs. Sarah's eyes met his, filled with a mixture of compassion and resolution. I think we should go, she said quietly. Give her some space, give all of us some space to figure this out. Sarah, please, don't let Richard win. This isn't about Richard, she replied, taking Ethan's hand. It's about our children, and what's best for them right now. Maybe a little distance would help everyone gain perspective. As he watched Jenkins drive them away, Alex felt something vital slipping through his fingers, not just the potential of whatever had been growing between him and Sarah, but the fragile progress Olivia had made. All of it threatened by the same ruthless corporate machinery he had once wielded so effectively himself. That night, after putting a still upset Olivia to bed, Alex sat in his study with a glass of Caroline's favorite bourbon. Tomorrow's board meeting loomed before him like an approaching storm. Richard would make his move, presenting evidence of Alex's compromised judgment and conflict of interest. The vote might be close, but with enough pressure applied to the right board members, Richard could succeed in removing him as CEO. And then what? The Bennett Group would continue without a Bennett at the helm for the first time in its history. The company would likely become more profitable, more ruthless, more like the corporate entity his father had envisioned, and less like the force for balanced development Alex had been trying to create. He would still be wealthy, still able to provide for Olivia, but something essential would be lost, not just his professional identity, but the chance to transform the company into something Caroline would have been proud of, something that honored both her memory and the memory of men like David Miller, whose lives had been sacrificed in the name of progress and profit. As the night deepened around him, Alex Bennett faced the hardest choice of his life, between the company that bore his name and the values that defined the man he wanted to be. The Bennett Group's boardroom was silent as Alex straightened his tie and prepared to face the 12 men and women who held his professional fate in their hands. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan sprawled below them, a concrete testament to generations of Bennett ambition and vision. Richard Blackwood sat at the far end of the E table, his silver hair impeccably styled, his expression one of practiced concern. Beside him, Walter Garrett looked troubled, his weathered face revealing the conflict of a man caught between loyalty and business pragmatism. I believe we all understand why we're here, Richard began, opening a leather portfolio. The question of leadership at Bennett Group has become a matter of urgent concern. Has it? Alex's voice was calm, betraying none of the turmoil he'd experienced over the past 24 hours. Our quarterly earnings exceeded projections by 18%. Our sustainability initiatives have generated positive press and attracted new investors. By any objective measure, the company is thriving. Financial performance is only one metric of successful leadership, Richard countered smoothly. There are also questions of judgment, of focus, of priorities. He slid documents across the gleaming table. These materials outline a pattern of decisions that prioritize personal interests over shareholder value. Alex didn't touch the folder. He already knew what it contained: photographs of his meetings with Sarah, reports on the cancelled Brooklyn development, analysis of the lost opportunity costs of his more conservative recent projects. Before we proceed, Alex said, I'd like to address the matter of Sarah Miller's employment. Richard's eyebrow arched. I wasn't aware that individual hiring decisions were board-level concerns. They become board-level concerns when a board member interferes with the standard hiring process to advance a personal agenda. Alex turned to the company's HR director, who sat uncomfortably at the side of the room. Ms. Winters, could you please explain what happened with Mrs. Miller's position? The woman cleared her throat nervously. I received a call suggesting that the position be reconsidered due to potential conflicts of interest. The caller implied that continuing with the hire might be viewed unfavorably during budget reviews. And who made this call? Alex asked, though he already knew the answer. Winters glanced at Richard before responding. Mr. Blackwood. A murmur ran through the boardroom. Richard's expression didn't change, but a slight tightening around his eyes betrayed his annoyance. The board has a responsibility to protect the company from liability, he said. Mrs. Miller's connection to a workplace accident on a Bennett project, combined with her personal relationship with our CEO, creates an obvious conflict. There is no personal relationship, Alex stated firmly. Mrs. Miller's son and my daughter are friends. That friendship has been instrumental in helping Olivia recover from the trauma of losing her mother. The only conflict here is between compassionate leadership and the kind of cold corporate calculation that sees people as liabilities rather than human beings. Richard's smile was thin. Eloquent, but irrelevant. The facts remain. You've been making decisions influenced by your connection to the Millers. The rejected Brooklyn development would have delivered significant returns. Instead, you proposed a renovation project with lower profit margins and higher community engagement, a project that would benefit the very neighborhood where Mrs. Miller was seeking housing. I wasn't aware that considering the human impact of our developments was contrary to our mission, Alex replied. My father built this company on the principle that successful business and community responsibility could coexist. Your father built this company to create wealth, Richard corrected. The Bennett fortune didn't accumulate through sentimentality. The words hung in the air, challenging not just Alex's leadership, but his understanding of his own family legacy. For a moment, doubt crept in. His father had indeed been ruthless in business, often dismissing concerns about displaced communities or environmental impact as the cost of progress. Had Alex been romanticizing that history to justify his own evolving priorities? Garrett cleared his throat. If I may, I knew Frederick Bennett longer than anyone in this room. He was a complex man who certainly prioritized profit, but not at the expense of his integrity. In his later years, he often expressed regret about some of the company's more aggressive tactics. The older man's gaze swept the room. I believe Alex is honoring the best parts of his father's legacy while evolving the company for a changing world. Richard's expression hardened. Touching, Walter. But ultimately, this isn't about Bennett family history. It's about Alex's judgment being compromised by personal entanglements. You want to talk about compromised judgment? Alex's voice took on an edge. Let's discuss the Hampton Shores development from last year, a project you championed despite environmental concerns that have now resulted in 3 lawsuits, or the aggressive acquisition of the Riverside properties, where tenants were given minimal notice before eviction. Tenants including families with children, elderly residents, people with nowhere else to go. Business decisions, Richard dismissed, made in the company's financial interest. At what cost? Alex stood, unable to remain seated any longer. At what point do we acknowledge that our decisions affect real people? With real lives? David Miller was a real person, a husband, a father, a man who went to work one day on our project and never came home. His wife has spent 3 years working multiple jobs while raising their son alone, and now she's facing eviction because another developer wants to convert her building into luxury condos. Tragic, Richard said, his tone suggesting the opposite, but not our concern. It should be our concern, Alex insisted, just as the environmental impact of our developments should be our concern, just as the communities we build in or displace should be our concern. These aren't abstract concepts. They're the direct consequences of our decisions in this room. Richard sighed dramatically. This emotional appeal only proves my point about compromised judgment. I move that we proceed to a vote of confidence. Before we vote, Alex said, I'd like to make one final statement. He took a deep breath, centering himself for what came next. Regardless of the outcome today, I want it on record that I stand by every decision I've made as CEO, including my friendship with Sarah Miller and my support of the relationship between our children. He looked around the table, meeting each board member's eyes. When I took over from my father, I inherited a company with a mixed legacy, financial success tainted by human cost. I've tried to balance those scales to build a company that generates profit while also generating positive impact. If that vision is incompatible with the board's expectations, so be it. But I won't apologize for seeing the human beings behind the balance sheets. The vote was conducted by secret ballot, a tradition dating back to the company's founding. As the executive secretary collected and tallied the results, Alex found his thoughts drifting not to the potential professional humiliation awaiting him, but to Olivia's accusation the day before. You always say everything has to be perfect. Had he been that rigid, that demanding of perfection? Had his drive for control and excellence contributed to the circumstances that took Caroline from them? The possibility was a weight he had carried silently for 3 years, never allowing himself to fully examine it. The results are tallied, the secretary announced, handing the paper to Walter, who as senior board member would read them aloud. Walter's face revealed nothing as he reviewed the count. By a vote of 7-5, the board expresses confidence in Alexander Bennett's continued leadership as CEO. A narrow victory, but a victory nonetheless. Relief washed through Alex, followed immediately by resolve. He had been given a chance to continue his vision for the company, but that vision needed to evolve to become even clearer in its purpose. "Thank you for your confidence," he said. "I don't take it lightly." He turned to Richard, whose face had settled into a mask of dignified disappointment. "Richard, your concerns about my leadership have been noted. While I disagree with your methods, I respect your commitment to the company's financial health. I hope we can find common ground moving forward." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Congratulations, Alex. The board has spoken and I respect their decision, for now." The implied threat wasn't lost on anyone in the room. This battle had been won, but the war for the soul of Bennett Group was far from over. As the meeting adjourned, Walter caught Alex's arm. "That was closer than it should have been. Richard has more support than you realized." "I know," Alex acknowledged. "But I can't lead by his playbook, Walter. That's not the company I want to build." "Then you need to articulate your vision more clearly, not just to the board but to the public. Richard's strongest argument is that your personal feelings are driving business decisions. Counter that by making your business philosophy explicit." And the idea began to form in Alex's mind, something that had been germinating since his conversation with Sarah the night before. What if I did more than articulate it? What if I demonstrated it? Walter's eyebrow rose. "What are you thinking?" "Something Caroline would have approved of," Alex replied with the first genuine smile he'd felt in days. "Something that honors both her memory and the responsibility we have to people like the Millers." The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and phone calls as Alex set his plan in motion. By evening, when he returned home to Westchester, the framework was in place. All that remained was the most crucial element, the one conversation he dreaded most. He found Olivia in her room, methodically arranging and rearranging a collection of small figurines on her bookshelf. The Fairy Village accessories from her project with Ethan had been abandoned in a box in the corner. "Hey, Liv," he said softly, sitting on the edge of her bed. "Can we talk about yesterday?" She shrugged without turning, continuing to line up the figurines with mathematical precision. "I owe you an apology," Alex continued. "You were right about something important. I have always expected things to be perfect, from myself, from the people around me, and sometimes from you and Mom." This got her attention. She turned her blue eyes so like Caroline's, studying him warily. "The night of Mom's accident," he said carefully, "you were running late for ballet, and I had called, asking when you'd be home because I had a business dinner." Olivia nodded, slowly. Mum said we had to hurry. She said you needed us to be on time. The simple statement hit Alex like a physical blow. All this time, he had carried the unspoken guilt of wondering if his demands for punctuality had contributed to Caroline driving too fast on a rainy night. Now he realized that Olivia had been carrying a similar burden, the knowledge that their rush had been in part because of him. "It wasn't your fault," he said, his voice cracking. "Or Mom's. It was an accident. A terrible accident that happened because of rain and a truck driver who fell asleep. Not because you were late for ballet, and not because I was impatient about a dinner meeting." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "But if we hadn't been hurrying..." "We can't know what might have happened differently," Alex interrupted gently. "But what I do know is that neither you nor Mom did anything wrong, and neither did I, even though I've blamed myself too. Sometimes bad things just happen, and we have to find a way to live with them." "Like Ethan does?" Olivia asked. "He says his dad is gone, but he's not sad all the time." "Ethan is very brave," Alex agreed. "And wise for his age. He's helped. You find your voice again, hasn't he?" Olivia nodded. "He understands about missing someone, about being different." Her lower lip trembled. "Is he not coming back because I pushed him?" "No, sweetheart, he's not staying away because of that. He and his mom have some problems with their apartment, and there's been some complicated adult stuff happening. But I'm working on fixing it." "Promise?" The simple request carried the weight of all the promises he had made to her over the years, promises to protect her, to keep her safe, to make everything better, promises that had been shattered on a rainy night on the Taconic Parkway. "I promise to try my very best," he said honestly, "but I need your help. I need you to be brave like Ethan. Can you do that?" Olivia considered this, then nodded solemnly. "I can be brave." "Good, because tomorrow we have something important to do together. Something that might help Ethan and his mom and maybe other families too." The next morning, Alex stood before a hastily assembled group of reporters in the lobby of Bennett Tower, the very building where David Miller had lost his life 3 years earlier. Olivia stood beside him, her small hand clasped tightly in his, her face solemn but determined. Melissa had questioned the wisdom of including his daughter in such a public event, but Alex had been firm. "She needs to be part of this," he had insisted, "for her own healing as much as for the statement it makes." As the cameras flashed and the reporters settled into expectant silence, Alex began to speak. 3 years ago, on this construction site, a tragic accident occurred. A dedicated worker named David Miller lost his life while helping to build this tower, a building that has since become one of the crown jewels of the Bennett Group portfolio. He paused, allowing the significance to register with the assembled media. David Miller left behind a wife, Sarah, and a son, Ethan, who was 4 years old at the time. The Bennett Group provided a settlement as required by law, but we did not provide what truly mattered: ongoing support for a family whose life had been shattered by our project. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as reporters recognized the unusual nature of this admission. That same year, my own family experienced tragedy when my wife, Caroline, was taken from us in a car accident. Our daughter, Olivia, witnessed the accident and was so traumatized that she stopped speaking entirely. Alex felt Olivia's hand tighten in his, but she remained steady beside him, her chin lifted slightly in a gesture of courage that made his heart swell with pride. By what can only be described as extraordinary coincidence, Olivia and Ethan Miller met this summer in a playground sandbox. 2 children who had both experienced devastating loss formed a friendship that has helped them both heal. Ethan's friendship gave Olivia back her voice, quite literally, and through them, their parents. 2 people who should have been separated by circumstance and tragedy found common ground. He took a breath, moving to the heart of his announcement. "This experience has crystallized something I've been considering for some time: the need for Bennett Group to more fully embrace its responsibility, not just to shareholders, but to the communities we build in and the people whose lives are affected by our projects." From the corner of his eye, Alex could see Richard Blackwood standing at the edge of the crowd, his expression darkening as the direction of the press conference became clear. Today I am announcing the formation of the Caroline Bennett Foundation, which will focus on 3 initiatives. First, a comprehensive support program for families affected by construction accidents on any of our projects. Support that goes beyond financial settlements to include ongoing assistance with education, housing and healthcare. Second, a commitment to inclusive development that preserves affordable housing within our project areas, ensuring that existing community members can remain in their neighborhoods even as new development occurs. Third, a scholarship program for children who have experienced loss, providing educational opportunities and psychological support to help them navigate their grief and build resilient futures. The reporters had begun furiously taking notes, recognizing that this was more than a standard corporate announcement. The foundation will be initially funded with $50 million from Bennett Group reserves, with an additional $20 million from my personal assets. We are also establishing a dedicated portion of annual profits to ensure ongoing support for these initiatives. From the back of the room, Richard called out, "And what do the shareholders think about this redirection of company funds, Alex?" Alex met his challenger's gaze steadily. The board approved the foundation funding this morning by a vote of 9-3. As it turns out, the majority of our board believes that corporate responsibility and long-term sustainability are not just ethical imperatives but sound business strategy. He turned back to the assembled reporters. The first beneficiaries of the foundation's housing program will be families in the Queens Riverside Apartments, a building recently purchased by a developer with plans to convert it to luxury condos. Bennett Group has made an offer to acquire the property instead, with plans to renovate while maintaining affordable units for current residents. A reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Bennett, isn't that the building where Sarah Miller lives? The widow you mentioned earlier?" "Yes," Alex acknowledged straightforwardly. "Mrs. Miller and her son are among the residents facing eviction. Their situation brought the issue to my attention, but the problem extends far beyond one family. Displacement due to development is a crisis affecting thousands of New Yorkers, and Bennett Group has contributed to that problem in the past. It's time we became part of the solution." "Some might see this as a personal project rather than a business decision," another reporter suggested. "How do you respond to that?" Alex nodded, having anticipated the question. The personal and the professional often intersect, especially in a family company like Bennett Group. My father built this business with a vision of shaping New York's skyline. I intend to honor that legacy while expanding it to include not just what we build, but how we build it and who benefits from our work. He felt Olivia tugging at his hand and leaned down to hear her whispered request. Straightening up, he smiled at the assembled reporters. "My daughter would like to say something, if that's all right." A surprised murmur went through the crowd as Olivia stepped forward. For a moment, Alex feared she might freeze in the face, serve so much attention, but she lifted her chin and spoke in a clear, steady voice that carried throughout the lobby. "My friend Ethan says that when you lose someone, you can keep them in your heart by doing good things that would make them happy. I think my mom would be happy about helping other kids who miss their parents, and I think Ethan's dad would be happy that we are helping families like his." The simple statement, delivered with a child's unvarnished sincerity, created a moment of profound silence in the room. Then from the back a slow clap began. Alex turned to see Walter Garrett applauding, tears glistening in the old man's eyes. One by one, others joined in, until the entire lobby echoed with applause. As they left the press conference, Alex spotted a familiar figure standing near the exit. Sarah Miller, her eyes wide with astonishment. Beside her, Ethan was practically bouncing with excitement at the sight of Olivia. "You didn't tell me you were doing this," Sarah said as they approached. "I wasn't sure you'd approve," Alex admitted. "I know how you feel about accepting help." "This is a bit more than help," she responded, gesturing toward the reporters still milling about. I don't even know what to call it." "A beginning," Alex suggested. "A chance to build something meaningful from everything that's happened to our families, if you're willing to be part of it." Sarah's expression was unreadable as she processed the implications of his words. Meanwhile, Olivia and Ethan had already drifted a few feet away, heads bent together in animated conversation. "You put yourself at risk," Sarah observed. "Your position, your company. Some things are worth the risk." She studied him, her green eyes searching his face as if looking for hidden motives. "Why, Alex? Why go to these lengths? Is it guilt? Atonement?" "Maybe it started that way," he acknowledged. "But it's become something else, something more important." He hesitated, then added quietly, "Olivia needs Ethan in her life, and I've come to believe that I need you in mine." The admission hung between them, more vulnerable than any press conference declaration. Sarah's expression softened, the wariness giving way to something warmer but still cautious. "That's a complicated foundation for anything," she said finally. "Most real things are complicated," Alex replied, "but worth figuring out." Ethan bounded back over to them, tugging at his mother's hand. "Mom, Olivia says there's a pond at their house with fish that eat from your hand. Can we go see them? Please." Sarah looked from her son's hopeful face to Alex's waiting one, and something shifted. In her expression, a decision forming behind her eyes. "Yes," she said finally. "I think we can do that." As they walked out of the tower together, not as CEO and employee, not as benefactor and recipient, but as two people facing the future with a shared understanding of loss and possibility, Alex felt a weight lifting that he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. The company might face challenges ahead, and their unconventional relationship would certainly raise eyebrows, but for the first time in 3 years, he was moving forward rather than merely surviving. And Olivia, walking ahead with Ethan, her voice animated as she described the koi pond to her friend, was proof that even the deepest silence could eventually give way to new beginnings. 6 months passed like pages turning in a well-loved book. Winter gave way to spring, and with the changing seasons came other transformations, some subtle and others profound. The Caroline Bennett Foundation had grown from an ambitious announcement to a functioning organization with dedicated staff and a growing portfolio of projects. The Queen's Riverside apartments had been renovated with residents in place, their rents stabilized for the next decade. Similar initiatives were underway in 3 other neighborhoods, with plans expanding to other cities where Bennett Group had developments. Olivia had returned to school in January, initially for half days with a specialist teacher, then gradually transitioning to full-time attendance. Her classmates had been curious about her long absence, but quickly adapted to having her back among them. She still had quiet days, moments when the weight of her loss pressed down, but they no longer consumed her. She had found her voice again, not just the physical ability to speak, but the emotional capacity to engage with the world around her. For Alex, the changes were equally significant. The board had stabilized after Richard Blackwood's resignation in February, officially to pursue other opportunities, though everyone understood it was the result of his failed coup attempt. The company's new direction had generated mixed reactions from investors initially, but as the positive press mounted and new partners emerged who valued the social responsibility angle, the financial outlook had strengthened beyond expectations. And then there was Sarah. Their relationship had evolved with careful, deliberate steps, friendship deepening into something more, tempered by their shared history and complicated circumstances. She had accepted the foundation's first executive director position after completing her nursing degree, bringing her healthcare background and personal experience to shape the organization's mission. The role allowed her to work flexible hours, while finishing her clinical rotations, building toward her long-term goal of becoming a pediatric nurse practitioner. They had maintained separate homes, Sarah and Ethan still living in their now renovated Queen's apartment, while Alex and Olivia remained in Westchester. The arrangement provided stability for the children, while allowing the adults to navigate their evolving relationship at a measured pace. Weekends were often spent together, alternating between homes, and Wednesday playdates remained a sacred tradition. It was on one such Wednesday in April that Alex found himself sitting on a bench in Central Park, the same park where Olivia and Ethan had first met nearly a year earlier. The children were, nearby, engaged in an elaborate game that involved collecting specific types of leaves and arranging them in patterns. Their laughter carried on the spring breeze, a sound that still occasionally caught Alex by surprise with its precious normalcy. Sarah sat beside him, her nursing textbook open but neglected as she watched the children play. "Ethan got an A on his history project," she commented, "the one about family heritage. He included a whole section about David's construction work, complete, with pictures of buildings he helped build. Including this one." She gestured toward the Bennett Tower visible in the distance. "How did that make you feel?" Alex asked, sensitive to the complex emotions such a project might evoke. Sarah considered the question. "Proud, mostly. He's found a way to honor his father that isn't just about loss. He sees David's work as something lasting, something that matters." She smiled slightly. "Of course, he also included about 10 pages on his bonus family, and all the adventures you've taken him on." The term bonus family had been Ethan's creation, his way of describing the expanded circle of love and support that had formed around him and Olivia. It captured the blend of chosen connection and circumstance that had brought them together. "I've been meaning to talk to you about something," Alex said, turning slightly to face her. "The foundation is opening a new center next month, a place for children who've experienced loss to receive counseling, participate in support groups, and just have a safe space to process their grief." "I know," Sarah replied with a raised eyebrow. "I'm the executive director, remember? I've been interviewing staff for weeks." "Right," Alex acknowledged with a smile. "What you don't know is that during the planning stages, I discovered something. About Ethan, something he never told us." Sarah frowned. "What do you mean?" "I was reviewing cases similar to Olivia's, children with traumatic mutism following loss or trauma. The hospital where you work had a research program on the subject 3 years ago." Understanding began to dawn on Sarah's face. "How did you find out?" "Dr. Feldman knew one of the researchers. She made the connection when I mentioned Ethan's background." Alex paused. "He stopped speaking too, didn't he?" "After David's accident." Sarah nodded slowly. "For almost 6 months, the doctors called it selective mutism, brought on by trauma. He was in a research study at Queen's General. That's how I first started working there, actually. I volunteered in the pediatric ward to be near him during his therapy sessions, and eventually they offered me a job." "Why didn't you tell me?" She shrugged. "At first it didn't seem relevant. By the time I realized how significant it was, that both our children had responded to loss the same way, we were already navigating so many complicated connections. It felt like one more cosmic coincidence that might overwhelm whatever was growing between us." Alex nodded, understanding her reasoning. "When did he start speaking again?" "Gradually. The therapy helped, but what really made the difference was starting school. He met a little girl in his kindergarten class who had recently lost her mother to cancer. Something about their shared experience created a connection." Sarah's voice softened with memory. "The teacher told me they sat together at recess, not talking, just being together in their grief. Then one day, Ethan came home and spoke a full sentence, the first in months. He said, 'Maya shared her cookies with me today.'" "A connection with someone who understood," Alex murmured, watching Olivia and Ethan compare leaf collections. "Just like what he gave Olivia." "I think that's why he was so drawn to her at the playground," Sarah agreed. "He recognized something in her silence. He'd been there himself." The revelation settled between them, another piece of the intricate pattern that had brought their families together. Not just coincidence or chance, but a deep recognition between two children who had walked the same difficult path. "That's why I wanted to talk to you," Alex continued after a moment. "The new center needs a name. I was thinking, the Phoenix Center, the idea of rising from ashes, of rebuilding after loss. It's a good name," Sarah agreed. "Strong, hopeful. But then I thought about what really made the difference for both Olivia and Ethan. It wasn't just professional help or time passing, it was connection, finding someone who understood, who had been through the same darkness." Sarah nodded, following his thinking. "The power of shared experience." "Exactly, so I had another idea." Alex hesitated, suddenly nervous. "What about the Miller Bennett Children's Center? honoring both our families, both our journeys. Sarah's eyes widened. Alex, the board would never approve using the Miller name alongside Bennett. Your family has a legacy, a business empire. David was just a man who helped build that empire, Alex interrupted gently. A man whose loss created ripples that eventually brought healing to my daughter. The Miller legacy matters, just as much as the Bennett one, Sarah. Tears gathered in Sarah's eyes, but she blinked them away with a determined smile. You're going to scandalize the corporate world, you know, first by dating an employee. The foundation's executive, director, Alex corrected with a grin. And now by putting our names together on a building. People will talk. Let them, Alex said simply. Some things matter more than what people say. They sat in companionable silence for a few minutes, watching the children race from tree to tree in their leaf-collecting mission. Then Sarah spoke, again her voice thoughtful. There's something else you don't know, something Ethan told me recently that I've been trying to find the right moment to share. Alex turned to her, curious. He said that when he first met Olivia, he recognized her silence because he'd been through it himself. He said he decided right then, in the sandbox, that he would help her find her voice again, the way Maya had helped him. He was only 7, Alex marveled. How could he understand something so profound? Children often understand more than we give them credit for, Sarah replied, especially children who have had to grow up too quickly. Alex absorbed this, watching Ethan with new appreciation. The boy who had appeared in their lives by chance had approached Olivia with intention and understanding beyond his years, recognizing in her silence an echo of his own past struggle. There's more, Sarah continued. When I asked why he never mentioned his own experience with not speaking, he said he was afraid we wouldn't believe he could help Olivia if we knew he'd been broken too. He thought adults only trust helpers who have never needed help themselves. The fire. Simple observation carried a wisdom that struck Alex deeply. How often had he hidden his own struggles, believing that strength meant never showing vulnerability? How much of his corporate persona had been built on the illusion of invulnerability? He was helping her heal, while still healing himself. Alex said softly, "We all are," Sarah pointed out. "Isn't that what this has been about? Finding ways to move forward together, each bringing our broken pieces to create something new." The insight resonated with everything Alex had come to understand over the past year. About grief, about recovery, about the messy, non-linear process of rebuilding a life after loss. The Miller Bennett Children's Center, he said again, more firmly this time. A place where broken pieces come together to create something stronger, where children can find their voices again, whatever form that takes. Sarah's hand found his on the bench between them, her fingers intertwining with his. "I like it," she said simply. The center opened on a perfect May morning, its bright facade a welcoming beacon on a tree-lined street in Queens, deliberately situated in a neighborhood accessible to families from all socio-economic backgrounds. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was small but significant, covered by local media, and attended by families already enrolled in the Foundation's programs. Olivia and Ethan had been given the honor of cutting the ribbon together, their small hands holding the oversized scissors while photographers captured the moment. Above them, the sign proclaimed the Miller Bennett Children's Center in dignified letters, with a smaller subtitle, "Where Voices Find Strength." The first group session was scheduled for that afternoon, a pilot program for children who had experienced parental loss. To everyone's surprise, Olivia had asked to help lead it alongside Ethan, with trained counselors supporting them. The children, she insisted, would be more comfortable hearing from others who truly understood. As the adults prepared the space, setting out art supplies and arranging chairs in a circle, Olivia approached her father with uncharacteristic hesitation. "Dad, can I ask you something important?" "Of course, Liv, anything." She twisted her hands together, a gesture reminiscent of Caroline when she was gathering her thoughts. "I was thinking about Mom, about how she always said that helping people was the most important job in the world." Alex nodded, his throat tightening slightly at the casual reference to Caroline. something that had become easier for Olivia over time, but still carried emotional weight. "I think she would like this place," Olivia continued, "and I was wondering, do you think someday when I'm grown up I could run it, like Sarah runs the foundation?" The question caught Alex by surprise, not because of the ambition it revealed, but because it represented a future Olivia was actively imagining for herself, one connected to helping others through the very grief that had once silenced her. "I think that would be wonderful," he managed, his voice rough with emotion. "Your mom would be incredibly proud of you, Liv." She nodded, satisfied with his answer. "I'm going to practice my introduction now. Ethan says we should start by telling our own stories so the other kids know we understand." As she walked away to join Ethan, who was arranging stuffed animals on a shelf with methodical care, Alex felt Sarah's presence beside him. "Everything okay?" she asked, noting his emotional expression. "Better than okay," he assured her. "Olivia just shared her career plans with me. Apparently, the Bennett family business might be shifting from real estate to healing." Sarah smiled. "A worthy evolution. Though who knows what those two will come up with together. They're quite the force when they combine their talents." They watched as the children worked in tandem, Olivia organizing papers while Ethan arranged the seating area, their movements synchronized by months of friendship and shared purpose. "I've been thinking about what you said in the park," Alex said after a moment, "about us all healing together, bringing our broken pieces to create something new." Sarah turned to him, her green eyes curious. "What about it?" "I've been carrying something for a long time, a question I never asked because I was afraid of. The answer." He took a deep breath. "The night of Caroline's accident, I called her, pressuring her to hurry home for a business dinner. I've always wondered if that contributed to the crash, if my impatience somehow—" "Stop," Sarah said firmly, placing her hand on his arm. "Alex, listen to me. David left for work early on his last day because I asked him to pick up milk on his way home. Should I blame myself because if he'd left at his usual time, he might have missed the accident entirely?" The parallel struck Alex silent. "We can't live in those what-ifs," Sarah continued. "Believe me, I've tried. They're quicksand. The more you struggle with them, the deeper you sink. The accident that took Caroline wasn't your fault, just like the construction accident wasn't David's fault or mine or even yours. But as CEO, you were responsible for the company's safety policies, yes. And you've spent the last year transforming those policies, creating supports for affected families, making meaningful changes. That's not guilt. That's growth." Her words penetrated the armor of self-recrimination Alex had worn for so long, offering not absolution, but perspective, a way of honoring the past without being imprisoned by it. "When did you get so wise?" he asked with a small smile. "Probably around the 300th night of lying awake, wondering if I could have prevented David's accident somehow," she admitted. "Eventually I realized that honoring his life meant living my own fully, not getting stuck in an endless loop of regret." The first families began to arrive, parents leading children with the familiar mix of hope and apprehension that Alex had come to recognize. Each family carried their own story of loss, their own version of the silence that had once enveloped Olivia. Ethan greeted them with exuberant warmth, while Olivia offered quieter welcomes, her blue eyes serious but kind. The contrast in their approaches created a balance, Ethan's energy making the space feel alive and safe, Olivia's thoughtfulness providing room for more reserved children to ease in at their own pace. "They're good at this," Sarah observed. "Really good." "They've had excellent teachers," Alex replied, watching as a particularly shy child responded to Olivia's gentle invitation to join the circle, including each other. As the session began, with Olivia and Ethan bravely sharing their own experiences of loss and silence, Alex felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with corporate achievements or financial success. The circle of children, each carrying their own burden of grief, was beginning to connect. Tentative smiles, hesitant nods of recognition, the universal language of shared experience. This, he realized, was Caroline's true legacy, not the foundation that bore her name, but the healing that flowed from it, not the buildings that defined the Manhattan skyline, but the connections being formed in this room, children helping children find their way back to wholeness. And somehow, through all the improbable twists of fate that had brought them to this moment, it was also David Miller's legacy, a man Alex had never met but whose absence had created the circumstances for Ethan to become the friend Olivia needed, for Sarah to enter their lives with her strength and wisdom. Two families, broken by circumstances beyond their control, finding in each other not just comfort but completion, not a replacement for what was lost, but a new configuration of love and purpose built from the fragments that remained. As the session continued, with children beginning to share their own stories in halting words or through art, Alex felt Sarah's hand slip into his, a gesture that had become familiar and essential, anchoring him in the present moment while honoring all that had brought them here. "Look at them," she whispered, nodding toward Olivia and Ethan, who were kneeling beside a little boy struggling to express himself. They're showing him that it's okay to take his time, that his voice matters even when the words don't come easily. "They're showing all of us," Alex replied, squeezing her hand gently. Outside the center's windows, spring sunshine illuminated, the new sign with its promise of voices finding strength. Inside, that promise was already being fulfilled, not through grand gestures or corporate initiatives, but through the simple, profound connection of those who had walked through darkness and emerged carrying light for others to follow. It wasn't a perfect ending to their story, Alex knew. There would be challenges ahead, for the children in their care, for their unconventional family, for the Foundation's work in communities still struggling with the impact of development and change. But it was a meaningful beginning, rooted in the truth that the most powerful transformations often emerge from our deepest wounds, and that healing happens not in isolation, but in connection. And as he watched his daughter, once silent with grief, now helping others find their voices, Alex understood what Caroline had always tried to teach him, that true legacy isn't measured in buildings or bank accounts, but in the lives touched and transformed by love. In the end, it wasn't about the Bennett name on skyscrapers or the Miller name alongside